Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar, Turks, Tips, and Tricks. Today, we're going to focus on NX assemblies. For an agenda, very briefly, we're going to talk about geometric solutions, who we are, and more importantly, how can we help. Then we're going to dive into our subject, Turks, Tips, and Tricks, NX assemblies. Now, this is an interesting subject. It was actually someone that watches our webinars that they asked, hey, could we see something on reference sets? And I thought, absolutely. But besides for just reference sets, let's look at some other tools within NX assemblies as well. Some of these, you're going to know them really well. You use them all the time. For others, it might be something new. But whatever the case is, I hope you enjoy our webinar. As always, we've got the GotoWebinar Dialog Box. If you have any questions, please type them in, and I'll do my best to answer them during the webinar. But if I can't get to it, I will follow up with you afterwards. My name is Dan Turk, and I'm an application engineer with Geometric Solutions. Now, Geometric Solutions, we sell the best in-class software. We sell Siemens software solutions. But we're part of the larger Waltonen family of companies. So at Waltonen Engineering, we've got over 100 designers, engineers, and guess what software we're using? Well, we're using Siemens software. Then at the other end, we have Independence Tooling Solutions. So the very things that we're designing, we can also build them. So you could say from top to bottom, front to back, and every which way around, we've got you covered. The owner of our company, he put it really nicely. He said, our ability to successfully partner with our customers comes from our experience in using the tools we sell every day. So it's not just that we sell these tools, no, we're using them. All right, let's jump to the good stuff. We're going to get right into our webinar, Turks, Tips, and Tricks, NX Assemblies. Let me just jump over to my NX. Here we go. So what you're noticing on my screen is I've got this gigantic assembly. And boy, this is big. You can even see there's a couple of trucks that are on the screen as well. This model, it was actually started in a tool called NX Line Designer, where we can actually lay out what the lines of our plant, what those are going to look like. It's a pretty cool tool that we can look at another time. But nonetheless, we're going to look at the assemblies. Now, the first thing that I like to show people when using assemblies is there's a really nice tool, and it's called Find in Navigator. So I'm just going to type that into my command finder, and right there, Find in Navigator. I'm going to right click. I'm going to add this to my top border bar. So there it is. Now, the reason that I want to do this is this tool, it allows me to select anything, a component, a feature, a physics object. I choose Find in Navigator, and voila, it shows me right where that part is. Otherwise, you're selecting and then you're coming over here, you're right-clicking, try to find the component. It's a whole bunch of work. So I'm lazy, so instead, I just like to use that Find in Navigator. Now, the cool thing about it too is if I select one of these trucks, well, it unpacks the 4 that were there, and it shows the one that I selected. I'm going to use this tool quite a bit throughout this webinar, and so that's why I just wanted to show you what it is. All right, I'm going to close down the building and the trucks, and here you can see that we have this large assembly, this large plant. And again, it's a plant layout that was done in NX Line Designer. Let's zoom in and let's work a little bit with some reference sets. What we're going to do, we've got these little pallets, and there's boxes on some and not on others. What I want is I want to have these boxes part of the pallet assembly, and then I want to be able to, with a button click, say it's full, it's half full, or it's empty. So the first thing I'm going to do is just delete out some of these boxes that are on here. You'll notice that I'm not drilling down to the level of this assembly. I could, and remember, I could do that by clicking that Find in Navigator to find it a little bit easier. But the key is you don't have to do that. Right from the top level, you can make some adjustments. All right, so now I've got some boxes and they're just on this one pallet. But let me go ahead and find this part. So here I've got these pieces and I can see here's the pallet. And what I want is these boxes to be part of the, let's say, the pallet assembly. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. One is I'm just going to click and drag and put them right inside of the assembly. So now you can see I've got this assembly. It's a pallet with a bunch of boxes. And notice what happened to all the other pallets that we had. I'll do a quick undo. And I'm going to select them again. And this time I'm going to simply cut and paste. It does the exact same thing as the drag and drop, but I just wanted to show you that there's another way that you can do it. We'll then make the pallet assembly. I'm going to make that my work part. And here's where we get into our reference sets. Assemblies tab, reference sets, and I'm just going to create a couple of different ones. I'm going to say full pallet, make another one, empty pallet, and lastly, partial pallet. Well, then I can select on any one of these and I can start to choose what do I want to be in this reference set. So of course, I want the pallet. Now this is the empty one. So I might just deselect these boxes. There we go. I think I missed or grabbed a couple of pieces of wood. Full pallet. I want all the boxes, but I also want the pallet, of course. And then a partial pallet. Well, that's pretty obvious what I want. I just want it to be partial. So as I click through these different reference sets, each time you select one, you could then make some adjustments. So this looks good to me. I'm going to close. And then I'm going to make the top level my working part again. The nice thing then is I could go to any one of these assemblies, change the reference set to maybe it's an empty pallet or partial. Now in this case, there's a fork truck coming, so naturally it should be full. But you get the idea that really quickly you can go through and modify your assemblies. And we're just doing this for something simple like pallets, but I think you get the idea that you could use this for all sorts of different things. So that's using our reference sets. But let's go ahead and take this to another level. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the difference between make unique and save as. I'm going to come to the other side of this line. Pretty cool looking factory, eh? We're going to go to the other side of this line. And as it turns out, I want to change the diameter of this tank. So I'll just make it my work part. And I'm just going to make it easy on myself. I'll just use an offset in synchronous. Select both the faces, and then I can make my expand. Now wait a minute. I didn't realize that there were two of these. So if I change this one on the bottom, the top one's going to change, and that's not exactly what I wanted to do. I want this one on the bottom to be different. This is very common, right? So you say, okay, I'll do a save as. So I'm going to change the name of this, be really creative, to tank 1. Save as, yep, okay, good. So now I have tank 1, and up here, uh-oh, that's not good. It's also tank 1. You see, when you do a save as, it literally takes the part and it just gives it the exact same name. You're just changing this one part everywhere it's located. That's not exactly what I wanted to do. So what can we do then? Well, that's where we have this nice tool called Make Unique. So I'm just going to use my little command finder. We've got tank 1 and tank 1. This time, though, I'm going to right-click on tank 1, and I'm going to say that I want to make it unique. And I'll be creative again, tank 2. Okay. And notice what we've got. So there's tank 2. And when I look at this guy, tank 1. So it takes and it copies the part, but the bonus is it kills any connection. So now these two pieces, they are truly separate. So what I wanted to do on this part was change that tank diameter. So let me just go ahead and do that now. I'm going to just go in here, do a quick offset, and notice that's not highlighting. So I'll do my quick little offset. And good. So that's the difference between a save as and make unique. But let's take this to another level. Let's just say that on this tank 2, or I should have called it machine 2, but on this tank 2 part, maybe I want to have a bunch of different size tanks on here. And I want them to be components. Well, do I need to create a new component, remodel it, and do all that good stuff? No. I'm going to go to my part navigator, and I'll just roll down to the bottom, and you can see that this part, it's essentially an extrusion and an edge blend. It's an extrusion with a sketch. What I'm going to do is just select the extrusion and the edge blend, copy, paste. Now, the cool thing is when you're doing a copy and paste and you just click the buttons, you don't have to worry about specifying new coordinate systems or anything like that. Now you'll notice, here's my other ones. And then I'll do another paste. Same thing, it's just going to drop it right into place. So I've got, you could say tank 3, second one, and my original one. Let me just take and make a couple of adjustments to another one of these tanks. just so we can kind of have them all a little bit different. And I'll just offset this guy, and we'll make this one a little bit smaller. Okay, so we've got 3 varieties of tanks. Yes, right now I could go into the reference sets and I could define each one of these individually. So I could say I want this solid to be part and the next one and the next, just like we did with the boxes. But what I want to show you is we have this nice ability to just create these parts as new components. So assemblies, new components, and underneath the settings, I've got this delete original objects. Again, I'm lazy, and so I already created these. Why would I want to create them again? So I'm going to say, let's make this as a new object. And you know what? Delete the old part right out of there. When I go to my assembly now, you can see what it does. It actually took that and made it a component. From here, when I hit save, it'll give me the option to give that a different name. Let's do that with the rest of these pieces. So new component, and one last one. There we go. So now we have our tank, or like I said, we should have said our machine, and 3 varieties of tanks that are in here. From here, we could go back into our reference sets, and maybe I want to make a new reference set that's called option 1, another one, option 2, and lastly, option 3. So option 1, what do I want? I want the entire part and just tank 1, or just model 1. Option 2, I want the entire part, but just model 2. And we do the same thing for option 3. This way, when I go in here to my reference sets, we can see how those options, how they're changing based on the reference set that we have. The nice thing about this is you're able to create these components without having to take the time to recreate them. That copy and paste, new component, yeah, that works exceedingly well. All right. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at how we can remember constraints. So you can see I've got these pedestals, and when I just look at the rest of the assembly, I can see there should be a robot arm that's on there. So I need to put the robot arm on, but since I'm going to do this a lot, I don't want to have to keep redefining what's going on there, or the constraints, I should say. So let me just go ahead and find this part. So there's my assembly. I'll make it the work part. And I'm simply going to add a component. And let's see, we'll just choose this robot arm. And OK. Now, something I want to point out briefly is I've got the component preview window. It's up, so we can actually, see it. Whoops, let me do that again. Okay, there we go. So there's that component preview. By default, it's actually off. So if you want to be able to find it, it's on the Add Component tab. settings, interaction options, and then preview window. So if you don't want it, then you'll be happy because that's the default. But if you do want it, it's just right there. So then what I'm going to do is add a couple of constraints. So I'm going to use concentric. So I'll choose the bottom edge to that edge and over here, and I'll just peek through the hole to there. Okay. All right. So now my part, it's on there, it's constrained. And we can see those couple of constraints. But this is where we can give ourselves an extra advantage. If I go to more, remember constraints. Now here's where it's cool. Okay, what is the component? I want this component, and I want you to remember these couple of constraints. So we remember the constraints, choose the component, and then choose the constraints. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to go into this assembly. And I want to add that robot arm again. So I'll just choose Add Component, just like we're used to. Choose the robot arm. And this time you'll notice it gives me an alert. It says, hey, wait a minute. This component, it actually has some constraints that are remembered. Well, I want to use them. And here's the trick. Do nothing to the Add Component box. Because this is where everybody gets messed up, is they're like, well, it's remembering it, but where? Just leave this alone and just hit OK. Then it's showing me, here are the constraints that need to be defined. And do you notice what it's doing in the little preview window? Maybe I'll make that a little bigger. It's showing me which one. So I could come in here, choose one side, choose the next, OK, and there's my part constraint. Now, yes, this is an easy one to constrain, but I saved at least half of my button clicks by doing this. If you had a more difficult part, you get the idea. It would just save you that much more time. So that's remembering constraints. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is arrangements. Let me just take and open this in a new window. All right, so what an arrangement is we're able to take, in this case, these robots, and maybe we want to have them in a different location. Or maybe we want to show what it would look like if there was 3 robots. With the arrangements, you're able to, with just a button click or two, differentiate one part or one assembly from one to another. Everyone thinks these are hard to use, but they're not. They're actually really easy. And we've only got a couple minutes, but in 5 minutes, you're going to know how to do arrangements. That's how easy they are. So I choose arrangements, and I'm going to make a new arrangement. I'm going to call this one 3 robots. I'll make another one called 2 robots. And finally, 2 robots with alternate position. I'm going to select the 3 robots and make that my working arrangement. Okay, I can count and I can see I need another robot. Let me just cheat. I'm just going to move this along with a copy. I also have my arrangements set to apply to used. Let me move the original one. We'll just move that a bit. Again, arrangements, apply to move, apply to used. And remember, I'm using the 3. There we go. And okay. I'll go back to my arrangements and let me just see if it worked. Yep. So very good. We got that extra one right in there. Now, if I go to the 2 robots with the alternate position, I'm going to take and move this one. So apply to used. And okay. Now, wait a minute. We still have that 3rd robot in here. Remember, we added that one to the assembly. Now, however, we just don't want it. So let me just find it. And I'm just going to suppress it. So I right click and suppression. Now here's what's really cool. I don't want this one, this 3rd one, in any of the 2 robot layouts. So I'll just say suppress them when they're in a 2 robot layout. In a 3 robot layout, I want to keep it. Okay. Let's go back to our arrangements. So there's the alternate position. There's the original position and the 3 robot position. If I go back to the 2 robots, you'll notice on my tree that it shows one of them as being suppressed. And if we ever want to unsuppress that, of course, it's just right click, going into the suppression and making our choices. But let's take what we've done here and let's go back into the top level assembly. And I'm going to right click, arrangements, 3 robots. And let me make the top my work part, just to make it look a little better. Arrangements, 2 robots, alternate position. The trick with the arrangements is when we're doing the move component, you want to apply it to used. The default is that it'll say use component properties. That'll move it everywhere, but you want to apply it to used. Arrangements work the same way if you were using constraints, where you can choose for each arrangement what constraints are on or what constraints are off. And actually, it didn't even take us 5 minutes to make these arrangements. It only took us about 4 minutes. So yeah, it's a very cool tool that we have. Let me go back to my little PowerPoint. Well, this is going to wrap up our webinar. I want to thank everyone. And I also want to remind you that we do these Turks, Tips, and Tricks webinars. We do it on the 4th Tuesday of each month. So we encourage you to mark your calendar. The webinar that we did today, hopefully you found it useful. If you did find it useful, it was actually somebody that watches our webinars that gave us the idea for this topic. Is there something that you would like to see? Well, if so, please send me an email, dan.turk@goplm.com. And if I use your suggestion, then I'll send you a pair of Turks Tips and Tricks nerd glasses. Well, once again, I'd like to thank everyone for your time and for your attention. If you'd like to know more, you've got my email address, but also you could email us at solutions@goplm.net. Would you like to learn more about our upcoming webinars? Well, go ahead and scan that QR code. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Have a great day. And as always, stay safe.